Hey everybody, Brent Florica here, and welcome back to Sketchbook B. So everybody, it's been a little bit since my last video, and for this one I wanted to experiment with something kind of new, but something that I've been really wanting to mess around with for a long time, and that's doing a little bit of the chibi art style. That's kind of with the big heads, small bodies. It's a really cutesy sort of vibe. A lot of little kids shows kind of use that design premise, to come up with something that's really kind of approachable and fun and soft. And anyways, I wanted to experiment with it, and I've tried kind of unsuccessfully for a long time to kind of jump into this sort of thing. But recently I've been looking at some tutorials and stuff on proportions for that and how to go about it. And I had an opportunity recently for my nephew's birthday to kind of do a little piece for him, and so I thought I'd use that and just show you kind of how this went for me. And I was really happy with the results, so I'm hoping that you enjoy this too. And without further ado, let's get into the first step, which as usual is the rough pencils, and I did this all digitally, so let's get into that process right now. So just, for privacy reasons, I didn't show the beginning part of kind of tracing over the image of my nephew's face. I wouldn't do anything sketchy there. To begin here, we have an armor design. And so I was doing sort of a bit of a Mandalorian design here. And I had so much fun with this from the beginning. So this is a little kid, so the proportions of the head relative to the rest of the body is almost 1-to-1, head to torso and legs together. So this creates this really squashed look that's so much fun to play around with. I always thought these style drawings were so cool and really fun, and there's some guys that do it super well, and I was just kind of looking at some examples. I was looking up a lot of Derek Laufman's work. His stuff is awesome, and you should totally check his stuff out on Instagram. It's amazing and super clean, and I've always really liked his chibi style drawings of various characters from pop culture. Super cool. And at this point I was just kind of looking up some reference for various Mandalorian characters that I liked, and trying to piece together kind of a set of armor that was kind of similar to some reference material, but also sort of unique as well. And I was going to switch up a lot with the color scheme and stuff like that later on, and so that was a part of this as well. Now, obviously, at this point, the process has kind of just begun, but I'd like to get my pencils fairly detailed so that I have a pretty good idea going in of what the inking is going to be. But that is something I'm trying to transition out of just as a time-saving thing. I find I spend a lot of time penciling, and then, it kind of bogs down the process. I feel like maybe my stuff would be a little less static looking if I was a little more fluid with my pencils, and then went into detail more with the inking stage. But that's something that's kind of in flux right now with my process, and I'm working on that. But we'll see kind of how that develops as I kind of grow as an artist along the way. So now I just drop the transparency on that pencils layer and go in and start inking. And I gotta say, at this point, I'm really happy with how my inking is sort of developing. I'm constantly kind of tweaking the ink brush to get it to a point where my pressure is kind of accurate to reality sort of thing, if I was using a real pen or brush. Sometimes there's still some kind of skinny line work that gets kind of left behind. It's very faint. If you zoom in, you can see it better. And so I'm trying to kind of clean that up a little bit with some of the settings, but work in progress. I'm getting there though. But for this one, yeah, it's very simplistic. It's very the idea is to make it just very clean and to just have fun with it. You know, this isn't something, you know, necessary. It's not like this crazy hardcore submission for something. It was a, you know, it's intended to be a gift and something just to have fun with. And I really enjoyed the process of just kind of trying to be as clean as possible with the line work, and still have the appropriate amount of detail. And I just really enjoyed kind of that whole process and throwing in a few fun little details, and like the dark saber there that I'm going to get to in a bit. Yeah, just a lot of the stuff kind of took place with just the coloring of it, and that's really where everything kind of started to pop. But yeah, I was definitely enjoying myself going through this process. This is something that I definitely want to do more of in the future, and feel free to make some suggestions in the comments of if you'd like to see me attempt any characters in this sort of chibi style. Feel free to offer some suggestions. I would love to hear from you, and I would totally do some of your suggestions if I receive any. I definitely want to practice this more. This is a lot of fun. The last step, of course, is just putting in a bit of a ground surface, and I did that fairly simplistically. You know, I didn't want it to distract too much from the character itself, but he's got to be standing on something so it doesn't look very jarring. Yeah, some just finishing touches with his mask or his visor there, and that kind of brings us to the end of the inking stage. So the inking process on this one was super satisfying, and I had a lot of fun with it. I was trying to be clean, and I felt pretty happy with the result there. I feel like the line work was as crisp as I can kind of get it at this point. The design itself, I was just really enjoying just this armor and stuff. The thought of that on this like little kid is just kind of an amusing concept, and that's part of the fun of this whole style, is getting to do something like this. So now is the really fun part, which is jumping into the coloring and the finishing touches and all of that stuff. So let's get into that and take this thing across the finish line. So I skipped over the flatting stage. That's just where I block out the areas of color. It's just a little bit tedious and time consuming, and you know, I just didn't feel like kind of putting you all through that, so we'll just skip right to the coloring phase. One thing I've noticed a lot with these was kind of the fun aspect of doing backgrounds with them. So I was just playing around with that. I thought as a starting point I would just figure out what my background situation was going to be like, because I thought depending on the color of this background, I wanted that color to sort of affect the lighting of the character, and so I thought I'd get that out of the way first. And I don't know, right off the bat, even just outlining the character in this bit of white made it all pop a little bit more, and just added this level of finish that just had me feeling good about it before I even went into the more detailed coloring parts. And so I've been experimenting a little bit more with the I think it's called the Magic Wand tool, or I guess what's called the Fuzzy Select tool in other programs, or but yeah, the Magic Wand. And basically I use it to click on an area of my flats that was one color, and it would select that whole area, and then from there I can go in and start coloring in with a little bit more detail various parts of it only within that selected area. So I can't go outside of that selected chunk. Even if I wanted to, it won't let me. And I'm trying to do this a little bit more. It actually does help speed things up a fair bit, I've been finding anyway. And my approach to this was just a very simplistic style of shading, where I would do mostly kind of a cell shaded vibe where you can kind of see a hard line between the different tones of color. But at the same time, there were certain instances where I would try and kind of blend that a little bit as well, or create sort of a gradient within an area of shadow just to soften a few areas. But I was kind of leaning into that cell shaded vibe for this, and I feel like that was kind of a fun exploration for me. It's something that I don't really do all that often, so but is something that's very common and very popular amongst, you know, comic book art styles and that kind of thing. So it's something that I want to get a bit of an idea about how to do, and I thought this was a good opportunity to just kind of learn about it a bit and do some practice with it. As you can see, I'm mixing in a little bit of that blue as highlights or rim lights in certain places, and you know, it's these kinds of little details that just start to make it feel more finished and complete and more polished. And so, you know, with each bit of detail that I added with this, it felt more and more like something that I was going to be really happy with. And this one was just one of those ones where it felt just exciting going through it, like I'm discovering this new thing that I haven't done yet. And you know, I'm thinking about the possibilities of what else I can do with this next. And so now I'm adding in, with the flats, I start with kind of a mid-tone for each color, and that way when it comes time to do the full out kind of finish coloring, I can add in lighter tones for the highlights and darker tones for the shadows. So I can kind of go both directions off of that sort of middle of the road tone. Now I'm just adding in a few little highlights here and there, some little details and stuff, and just to add the shading in and make everything feel a little more three-dimensional. Of course, I still have the dark saber to color, which was one of the things I kind of left for the end, because it's got some interesting stuff to it, and I wanted to make sure I had everything else sitting in a good place before I kind of went and tackled that. I was sort of pushing it off to the end. But yeah, I was really feeling happy with where this whole thing was sitting at this point, and I thought, okay, yeah, I'm ready to kind of go into this dark saber portion now and do some of the lighting effects and stuff that go into that. So you'll see that shortly here. So like I said, this one really gave me a lot of opportunity to mess around with some new stuff and a whole new style, and I had a ton of fun with it. Hope you enjoyed this process and seeing how it all came together. Again, if you have some suggestions, feel free to leave them. Otherwise, let's take a look at the finished product. Thanks so much for joining me at Sketchbook B. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. I really appreciate you spending some time with me on the channel. Hope you enjoyed this piece. I had a lot of fun putting it together, and I'll see you next time. Take care.